Good evening and welcome to Fleetway's Roundup with your boy Darius. Back at it again, another weekend, another show for you guys, and again, another new set of news that we got to be talking about that's been going on these past couple days. And I'm just glad again to be in this camera talking with you guys because, like I said, lots been going on these past few days, and as I put in my description and even some of my notifications, this is going to kind of be a little bit more of just a movie sports focused episode because that was what was more the news that was coming along these past couple days and everything. So we're going to go and get started with that. First things first, we just want to go and say from yours truly, congratulations to congratulations to the city of New York with the Knicks finally winning themselves a little bit of a championship here. I know this is big for the city. I know it's big for all of them involved. They've been fighting for this. We know that we were talking about the NBA Finals is going on between the San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks, and well, we're now finally here. The Knicks did it. They were able to pull out in Game 5. That's where it ended. The Spurs, they just couldn't handle the pressure of the finals. They just couldn't do it. I saw the game. Again, this whole series, and even I'm just going to show you guys in the scores from Game 1 to Game 5, these games have been consistently decided by second half comebacks by the Knicks here. So watch as I'm going to go and move my camera to the side. So let's see here with like a quick little breakdown. Game 1. Knicks won that game 105-95. Guess what? The Spurs, they had a lead on the Knicks in that game. That was the consistent theme here, is that the Knicks had leads on the Spurs. The Spurs had leads on the Knicks, and then in the second half they just completely blew those leads. It became so much of a talking point that the Spurs ended up kind of getting made fun of and talked about as the Atlanta Falcons, because we all remember the Atlanta Falcons when they were in that Super Bowl against the Patriots. They had a massive lead. I want to say, if I'm correct, it was 28 to 3, and halftime came and went. The Patriots came back on them, and we all know the story. Falcons choked that game, and it was embarrassing. I see you watching from H-Town. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, of course, that story now, all the memes online, the Spurs have been getting made fun of. People said, oh, I found a new logo for the Spurs, and they took the colors of the Spurs and then put the Falcons logo because they choked every single lead they had. Like as we see in Game 1, by the time we went into, let's see here, going into halftime, the Spurs, they had a pretty substantial lead. I mean, not a big lead, but they still had a lead. Then the Knicks were able to come back. That was the consistent story, and sadly, that is how the Spurs were knocked out from the finals, was from blowing another first half lead, which is just, you can't win games like that. And I watched it. They reminded me a lot of the Celtics, another team that was in the playoffs, and they both kind of shared the same issues, where I feel both the Celtics and Spurs could have won their respective games, but guess what? They focus so much on taking the three-pointers. And while three-pointers, sure, they're going to get you the points if you make them, but if you ain't got a designated guy that can make those shots, you end up basically taking a huge risk on the chance that if you miss it, the other team is going to get that ball back. And if they get the ball back, they're going to turn around and score, then you need to find a way to readjust and stop trying to go for threes. And the Spurs consistently didn't do that. Same with the Celtics. You would have thought the Spurs would have watched how the Celtics blew those games against the 76ers, because I think the Celtics 100% should have been able to beat the 76ers, and yet they focused so much on trying to make three-pointers, and they just couldn't do it. And it resulted in the 76ers surprising everyone and beating them. But Spurs sadly fell for it. But again, we're not talking about the Spurs. We're talking about the Knicks. And like I said before, congratulations to the city of New York. You guys did it. From what I've looked at, we're talking a championship that has been brewing and has been in the making for at least about 50 something years or so, since the last time the Knicks have won one of these things. So a big day for them. Congratulations again. I know I've been seeing the clips online. New York is getting crazy. You got all the parties happening in the streets. People people doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and I know Knicks fans are like, these people are not a representation of us. This is just the city of New York acting crazy. This is not what we would do. So may God have mercy on the city of New York, because they getting crazy out there. But yeah, I just wanted to at least talk about that before we start getting into the football side of things on the sports section. And well, the first thing to start off, well, also too, congratulations to the head coach of the Knicks, Mike Brown. If as the kind of ESPN posted, this is kind of a full circle moment, because back in 2007, Mike Brown lost the finals to the Spurs. 19 years later, he beat San Antonio to give the Knicks a championship that they haven't had, like I said, since in 53 years, which is insane to think about. But congratulations to the Knicks, and especially congratulations to the head coach, Mike Brown, for being able to accomplish this. But moving on into some of the football side of things here, one person that has been kind of not a hot topic, he's just kind of, his name has kind of came and went, especially because he was in free agency. It was looking like things weren't going to work out between him and the New Orleans Saints, and that is, of course, of the 8-time Pro Bowler, edge rusher Cam Jordan. He was heading into free agency. No one knew where he was going to end up landing. A lot of people had their speculations of teams maybe who need defensive help, but no one knew exactly where for sure he would be going. Well, it was officially announced. First, it was kind of being rumored, but then officially the Saints reported, and Adam Schefter reported that Cam Jordan will be returning to the Saints on a 1-year deal. So, I mean, that's where his career started, and I think it's best for him to, I would say that is where he should end his career, is with the team that drafted him. End it there. Hopefully, they could do something, but I doubt it. The Saints are clearly in a big rebuild mode, and we'll have to still even see if Tyler Shuck is the guy. So that's all gonna just depend on that. But hey, congrats to Saints fans. Y'all get to see the guy who started his career with you guys end up staying there and not end up going to another team. So we'll see if he's able to do anything for that defense. I doubt it. He's getting older, but hey, anything is possible in the league. Next up is we're going to kind of get into some players that have either been in the news for legal trouble, or other players that have that are now dealing with legal trouble. And before we even talk about the news that you're probably already reading ahead of me, I know how you guys work. There have been rumors going around that a certain guy that's been in the media for legal problems is 49ers wide receiver Brandon Ayuk. You guys may remember he was drafted with them 2024. He was seeming like he was going to be a really big piece of the puzzle for them. He was a big piece of the puzzle not drafted 2024, my bad. I'll take responsibility on that. In 2023, he had a really big season with the 49ers. He played a big part in helping them make it to the Super Bowl to eventually lose to the Chiefs, but he helped them out and was looking like a really good piece to what they were trying to build. Then sadly in 2024, we know that injuries started to come around. It turned into a big fiasco. Then he got a massive contract extension with the 49ers that they wanted to prove that, hey, we're dedicated to you. We want to see things. Of course, we all know that has gone all downhill, where he has not been reporting to training camp. He has been constantly trash talking the 49ers. He's been speeding down streets, giving middle fingers to the stadium. It's been a whole mess. And well, the reason that we're not really kind of dedicating too much of a section to it, and we don't want to talk about it too long, is because this is kind of a rumor, is that the 49ers are seemingly, rumors, again, like I said, this is rumors, that seemingly the 49ers will release Brandon Ayuk from this team before training camp begins, which makes sense. This has been an ongoing saga. We know that the 49ers were trying their hardest to maybe get a trade to get some value back, but all the teams were expecting them to release him into free agency, because no team really wants to give up anything for Brandon Ayuk. And that should tell you just how much of a bad boy, how much trouble he's been in, that teams don't want to give up anything for him. So, and the only team that does seem to possibly be interested is the Commanders, and even they're like, no, we're not going to trade for Brandon Ayuk. We're expecting you to release him. And so if it is true, if the rumors are correct, he will be getting released before training camp starts. So we'll even see if the Commanders are still interested, because now he got apparently arrest warrant going out for him after that video he posted of him going over the speed limit. So I don't know how this is going to turn out. Brandon Ayuk has been acting extremely cocky that he thinks he's going to become a commander once he's released. But at this rate, he's caused so much trouble, the Commanders may not even want to be signing him. So again, we'll have to see how that turns out. If we do get anything changing on that, trust me, I will post news and an update about it as well on YouTube Shorts. But the guy that we're talking about right now is the Atlanta Falcons defensive end, James Pierce Jr. We did briefly kind of talk about that he was into some legal trouble involving where he was stalking his girlfriend. He got into some problems stalking his girlfriend, breaking into a car, as he even says, aggravated battery, fleeing the law enforcement. This was back in February of this year. But a lot of things were going in. He went to some... if I'm correct, he went to some rehab, and it looks like now our new updates is that he is expected to be part of this week's mandatory minicamp. You guys may remember we have briefly talked about the mandatory minicamp. This is where players, both veterans and rookies, have to show up. The OTAs, those are more voluntary. Players can determine whether they want to show up or not. They don't have to, but it is encouraged. Mandatory is where they have to. So this is where if a player don't show up, then there's reasons to maybe be concerned on what's going on. So we'll definitely have to see how that turns out. But of course, with this report, we got that James Pierce Jr., he is going to be at the mandatory minicamp, but he's not anticipated to address the media, which makes sense because you don't want to take away from everybody who's supposed to be training, getting ready, to be having a distraction of the media constantly asking questions of hey, how's rehab been going, or are you planning on getting into any more trouble now that you're here with the Falcons, or how do you plan to? No one wants distractions, and so it makes sense why they don't want him to address the media and just want to keep moving forward so they can focus on what's important, and that's moving into the 2026 season. So we'll have to see what happens. I mean, of course, I'm always going to root for players to get an order, especially if I feel like that they have a future ahead of them. And James Pierce Jr., he has a future. He just needs to seriously focus, and hopefully he's able to, as the youth says, hopefully he's able to lock in and stop messing around with this kind of stuff. But one of our next little news here is Denver Broncos edge Jonathon Cooper. He's been kind of going into a little bit of some trouble, as it was just a week ago. There was the reports that he got arrested due to an altercation with his ex-girlfriend at the time, where apparently allegations were being thrown around by both sides about infidelity, cheating, and it resulted in both parties grabbing each other's phones and doing some damage, where apparently the girlfriend threw his phone at a wall. He apparently, as she reported, he put his hands on her, which, if this is true, it's definitely, we're taking this very seriously with these allegations that he put his hands on her. As she reported, that he picked her up, threw her to the ground, and then eventually grabbed her phone, put it in his mouth, and broke it with his own teeth. Out of everything, he's denied all the other stuff except the phone thing. So he did end up using his mouth to break a phone, which is like, that's crazy to me, but still, we're not talking about that. Well, there's been an update in the whole situation where it was reported that the linebacker edge rusher was arrested Thursday night last week on multiple charges that he violated a protection order that was filed against him earlier in the week, which is not good. This is the second time, like I said, we heard recently in previous weeks that he had already been dealing with problems, and this is the second time in the same month he has been arrested, and now he is breaking protection. So essentially, he is breaking a restraining order. And I don't know what was going in his mind. It's like you knew that there was some sort of order in place that you couldn't either be calling her, be in a certain distance with her, and instead and from what the reports are saying, he's called her multiple times, allegedly sent 20 messages, and it's like, what was going through your head, man? And now this is, at first it was seeming like, okay, this is allegations, we don't know the full story, we'll have to wait and see, the Broncos might be able to work something around this. now because of this, it's pretty much impossible. I do not see a result where Cooper ends up remaining a Denver Bronco going into the season. I don't see that. There's no way, in my opinion, from what I've read and looked at, and even what you might be reading on the screen here, I don't see a way where he's not gonna get some sort of consequence, whether it's a suspension, and even if it's a suspension, the Broncos, I don't think they're going to hold on to him. They're not going to want to keep a guy that's going to be bringing all this bad PR to the team, because every time he's playing, people are going to look at that point and be like, hey, that's the guy that did all this stuff to his girlfriend. Why is he still playing? It's the same way how I felt about my Packers. At the moment, thankfully, we know that it's currently still allegations. We don't know the full story. They're still trying to look at the evidence for the running back, Josh Jacobs. And even then, like, there's stuff coming out from the ex-girlfriend where they're starting to make people raise eyebrows that, wait a minute, maybe she really isn't telling the truth, and that this is all allegations, that she's just trying to make another dollar. But this situation with Jonathon Cooper, sadly, seems, it's not sadly, but looks more like it is in favor of the ex-girlfriend, that he's breaking restraining orders, protection orders. And I don't see a happy result in this, where he still ends up playing football this season. So again, it sucks to see this. It's a serious situation that has to be taken with serious. It has to be taken very seriously. And if anything happens, whether it's the Broncos announcing that he gets released, or if he gets officially, like, he gets sentenced, trust me, like with other news, I will try my best to do a YouTube short to break down the breaking news. But again, that's what's been updated as far as for Jonathon Cooper. Another man that has been, I know all this football news has been mainly about people who have been getting in trouble or have been in trouble. And this is the guy we've talked about. He is no stranger to this channel, and that is none other than the Chiefs, Rashee Rice, who we talked about. He had been arrested, that he would have to spend 30 days in jail, and that there's a chance that he could be even spending more time. Well, it was reported by Adam Schefter and even Fox 4 News that Rashee Rice was released today from the Dallas County Jail after serving 30 days for a probation violation. And this is, of course, a video here. I'm not going to play the video, as I just don't know if they're going to try to take down my video for using this footage. But basically, these are people showing him in the black hoodie of getting released from prison. And it looks like he'll be... I thought it was going to take a lot longer. And even in the comments, people are like what? As you can see, some of the comments, Rashee Rice getting back in the car immediately after leaving jail, and it shows SpongeBob with Mrs. Puff about to crash again. Some people proceeds to speed away from the scene. You see all these memes and stuff. Yeah, I'm not defending the guy, but I feel like it should be illegal to literally be chased by media members. I'm surprised too that media is able to be there in the prison and recording him getting ready to get released. I find that very surprising, but hey, I'm not official news. I don't know what they are allowed to do as far as with these kind of situations, but it is interesting. And again, to me, I thought he was going to be, I don't know, I thought he was going to be in there longer. And I'm not saying, I mean, yeah, I thought he was going to be in there longer. I didn't think he would get out this soon, but hey, it's the NFL. I hate to be that guy, but the NFL, especially if a player is really good, we've seen it before, and it's sadly just always going to be how the NFL works. If a player is good, there's always going to be the chance that they're going to work something out to get someone out sooner rather than later, so they can be back on the team. And that looks to be the case here. Like, so far the reports look like if everything stays according to plan, he'll end up being back for training camp with the Chiefs before the season. So another NFL player that might be walking away scot-free. You'll have to share your opinions down below. What do you think? Because we did break down about the whole situation with Rashee Rice. What do you think? Do you think he's guilty? Do you think he should have been in there longer? Or are you happy that he's out? I mean, I think if I'm correct, I think Hannibal Lecter said it best. If you run I think he said something along the lines when it came to him as a cannibal in the movies and show. He said, if you run a 4.8 in track, they'll just put it down as an eating disorder. And that line speaks very true when it comes to sports and criminals in sports, is that if you play good, they will find a way to twist the story that it benefits the player to be able to come back and play for them and with no consequences. So again, I'm not trying to tell you to pick a side, but again, share your opinions in the chat and comments below. What do you think about this whole thing? But one of our next little things that we're going to break down into the NFL side of things, if I could get this properly loaded in here. Of course, our boy Adam Schefter, he's always the guy talking about this stuff. He's always reporting, staying on top of the news. But kind of our next little thing we're going to break down is Brenden Sorsby. Now, we have not talked about this quarterback before because it hasn't been that big of a thing, but it has blown up into something serious. Brenden Sorsby, he was a college quarterback that was playing for the Indiana Hoosiers, and as we all know, if you may have heard the news, there was a whole situation that broke down where it was reported, well, not reported, but exposed that he was doing bets on his team to win games. And because of that, this resulted in a huge back and forth with the league and with Sorsby himself about being ineligible to keep playing. After Indiana had won, he was now kind of just in the transfer portal. If you don't know, the transfer portal is essentially like the free agency for college. And his next team he was supposed to be playing for was Texas Tech. But then a whole lot of court cases started coming out. They had to go into court with him involving this. And of course he did end up going to rehab for his addiction, as he says, something that he's dealt with since high school, a gambling addiction. We know how the league, both college and professional, feels about gambling, even NBA, sports in general. We all know how they feel about players betting on their own teams or even just gambling in general, and he was doing that. So it all ended up kind of resulting where essentially he was going to be going back to college to play for Texas Tech, the Red Raiders. Here's the problem, though. The Big 12, or the Big 10, one of those divisions that the Texas Tech Red Raiders play in, they were essentially making a huge stand of sorts to basically boycott the college football league, because they didn't want to play against him. They feel like his punishment was not enough. They feel like that a guy that's gambling on his own team should not be allowed to play, and they didn't want to play against them. So of course, the huge storyline is that either he was going to end up in the supplemental draft, which, to kind of give you guys a breakdown, the supplemental draft is where if a college player essentially was not able to end up in that year's draft, but also is ineligible to be in college, they can then apply for a supplemental draft where then teams can go and bid for the player to possibly come and join their squad instead of going through the whole regular draft process. And so it was kind of a middle line of either he was going to go back and play college, excuse me, guys, for the Red Raiders, or he was going to go to the supplemental draft. Well, it was looking like he was going to end up going back to college, but now because of the division the Texas Tech Raiders play in, doing a huge boycott that they will not play games against the Red Raiders if Sorsby is their quarterback. I guess they had not guessed, but it was like essentially officially reported that they would follow through on this, that he has to be ineligible to play in college, and that is the case. So leaving only one option left for Sorsby, and that is to apply for the supplemental draft. And of course, Adam Schefter, he reported on a few things here. He kind of broke down some NFL players who also were in the supplemental drafts and ended up getting drafted by their teams. Here's kind of a little breakdown. As you see, number 13, Josh Gordon, he ended up going to the Cleveland Browns. He was in the supplemental draft in 2012. Chris Carter in 1987 went to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 4th-round pick in a supplemental draft. We had Brian Bosworth, 1987. He was for the Seattle Seahawks. They gave a 1st-round pick for him. So as you're seeing, as I'm breaking it down, these teams, they bid away their draft picks to basically try to get the player. And as you're seeing, some teams were able to get the player for a 4th round. Some gave away a 1st round. Some gave away a 2nd, and so on and so forth. Terrell Pryor, I know a lot of Raiders fans know he looked really good in college, but then when he came to the Raiders, he just didn't look like the same player they were hoping. They received him in 2011 for a 3rd round pick. Bernie Kosser, 1985, a 1st round pick, and so on and so forth. So you get the gist. And well, with this whole Brenden Sorsby thing, now kind of goes into, and even if we kind of have a breakdown, and I'll even kind of read it. So let me move my camera here, just in case if anything I was saying wasn't, properly received, I could read off from ESPN themselves how they broke it down. Give me 1 sec here, guys. I'm going to go and get a little, sorry about that, kind of get a little bit rejuvenation for a second. Got to make sure these vocal cords are good to be able to keep reporting this news to you guys. But as reported, in a surprising twist, Texas Tech quarterback Brenden Sorsby now intends to enter the NFL supplemental draft ahead of the 2026 season, according to ESPN's Pete Thamel. Sorsby admitted to placing bets on a variety of sports and completed inpatient rehab for a gambling addiction. The NCAA denied his request for reinstatement in May, but a Texas judge granted him a temporary injunction in early June, making him eligible for the 2026 college football season. But amid a Big 12 lawsuit against Texas Tech and backlash around his eligibility, Sorsby ultimately opted out to head to the NFL. So as I was reporting earlier, as we just read right there was a lot of backlash, a huge lawsuit, because teams were like, we do not want to play against Texas Tech if that is who is going to be their quarterback. He deserves more punishment. And so because of all this backlash and all the lawsuits, Sorsby was like, okay, you know what? So he made the decision, I'm not going to go to clearly no one wants me there. I'm not going to get a chance to really start or play. So I'm going to go to the NFL now. Let's go into a little bit further. The NFL hasn't had a supplemental draft since 2023, and no one has been selected in one since 2019, when the Cardinals picked safety Jalen Thompson, who is currently still on their team right now, funny enough, with a 5th-round bid. The last quarterback to enter the supplemental draft was Terrell Pryor, who was a 3rd-round bid in 2011 for the Raiders. The league still needs to approve Sorsby's application for there to be a 2026 supplemental draft, which would take place sometime later this summer. Which from what I've heard in reports from Pat McAfee as well as Adam Schefter on that show, that bid, if he does get approved, would happen sometime towards the end of July. There are obviously a lot of questions to be answered. How did we get here? How does the supplemental draft even work? What is Sorsby's value, and which teams might be active? We tagged 8 experts to answer 8 questions about his entire situation and what might be next. Well, we already kind of went into a breakdown of that situation and what this could mean. And kind of what I want to finish off this football section with is I want to kind of really talk about which teams that I think, top 5 teams that I believe could end up possibly, not guaranteed, but could show interest in going for a guy like this. Because despite all this controversy, a lot of analysts stated that if he was in this 2026 draft, he would have been a top 10 pick, that he has top 10 quarterback talent, that he would have definitely been gone by round 10 to one of these quarterback needy teams. But of course, we all know what happened. He was going to stay in college, so on and so forth, and all we had was Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson that were drafted in that 1st round. So you kind of get where I'm going with this. So those 5 teams that I personally think that would show the most interest for a guy like Brenden Sorsby. And like I said, I know that, as we discussed, a lot of people feel there should be more consequences, especially with him gambling on his own team and so on and so forth. But like I said before, while some of these teams are going to consider that, if the guy is a top 10 talent, they're going to look past that and be like, okay, well, we'll deal with whatever the NFL is going to do as far as suspension, but we want him because we think we could work something out here. one of the teams, and this is not in any order, we're just saying in general, teams that I think are going to be interested. My first pick that I would believe has a very high chance of being a team that's going to be interested in Brenden Sorsby. And look at that. Even when I look up this team, ain't that something? Even when I look up this team, you see first Arizona sports, Brenden Sorsby, a gamble the Cardinals should just avoid. So, of course, a lot of people got their opinions, but still, I think the Cardinals are a team. Now, I know that there's some people who feel that with them already having Jacoby Brissett, Gardner Minshew, and the quarterback they did draft later in the 2026 draft in Carson Beck, the Cardinals wouldn't have enough playing time in training camp to be able to fit him in. I think they would find a way to do it. And because we just don't know, and the reason I think the Cardinals would be a team that might be interested in this is because, well, they really don't have a quarterback. They have a lot of good weapons in Marvin Harrison Jr., the tight end, Trey McBride. They have the highly anticipated running back in Jeremiah Love. So they have a lot of pieces that could maybe make them a competing team, not this year, but maybe next year if they get the right pieces. So they might want to take a risk on a guy like Brenden Sorsby, a top 10 talent of a quarterback, bring him over and see what they could work out. So I feel like that, again, I'm going to list a lot of teams that are those quarterback needy, but there are two/one team that is like, okay, wait a minute, that's an interesting pick, but I could still see it happening. Kind of in the honorable mentions. Another team that I think would very much be interested in this is the Miami Dolphins. This is the team that, yes, they did sign former Packers quarterback Malik Willis to a deal, but still, that doesn't really change the fact that the Dolphins could at least play around with the idea of having him on the team as another quarterback to work with, to train, get him better, and get him more prepared. So it's definitely something that should be, considered by Miami, because we just don't know how Malik Willis is going to do, especially because his team is really in a weird rebuild, kind of half rebuild stage. So we'll have to see how that turns out. But still, Miami Dolphins, I think, is another team that could be interested in this. A third team, of course, I got to talk about them, the Cleveland Browns. We don't know what their quarterback situation is going to look like. See, there it is. Another team that has it. But this one's saying Browns unlikely to bid. This one, they're trying to say unlikely, but the only reason they're saying that is because the head coach, Todd Monken, he did speak about Brenden Sorsby and says that there is a major gamble on him, that they just don't know what kind of player they're going to get, as well as the whole gambling thing. So he spoke on that, and a lot of people think that that's concrete. We're not going to go out there and try to get him, but that's far from the case. I think the Browns are still going to be a team that may be interested, considering their quarterback room is very, up in the air. Dylan Gabriel feels like a past memory. Shedeur Sanders, while a guy I am rooting for, the Browns may not be that confident in him. And then there's still a whole competition with that of Deshaun Watson. So it's a weird quarterback room, and they could possibly, and again, they could get a possible top 10 talent to bring over. So we just don't know how they could turn out. It's still something that should be considered. Another team that I think could be interested is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Listen, look at this. See, it's funny. The teams I'm picking out are teams that are being linked to Brenden Sorsby. And the reason I say the Steelers could be a team that would be interested in this is they have, I believe, 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers as their starting quarterback, who has already said this is his last season. So we already know this is his last season with Pittsburgh. They really are up in the air with quarterbacks. They drafted Drew Aller in the 2026 draft. And then they have last year's quarterback they drafted in Will Howard, which personally, I think they could work on trying to develop those guys, but that doesn't change the fact that the front office or people above could be like, hey, Let's go for that Brenden Sorsby guy. He's a top 10 talent. We should go and look into that. So Steelers, that's another team I think could be interested. Two teams, one that's my last one I think could very much do it, and another that's kind of an honorable mention is, let's see here. Give me one sec. Sorry, my brain is kind of having a little bit of a brain fart. But that other team that I think is, excuse me, bless me. Another team I think could be interested in Brenden Sorsby is that of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, a lot of people might be scratching their heads and be like, whoa, what are you talking about? They got Baker Mayfield as a quarterback. Well, here's the problem. They have not reached a new contract extension with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is currently as it stands right now at this current moment. If anything changes, we will report on it. But at this current moment, Baker Mayfield is going to be playing out his contract and then heading into free agency. He talked about with the media, there has not been any signs of a possible extension happening between him and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And he says that if he does not get an extension by training camp, and if training camp starts, he does not intend on working out a deal with them at that point and intends to just play out his contract and move on. And then that means that the Bucs will be heading into the 2027 season with no young quarterback to develop, no one to really work with, and then their star quarterback possibly heading into free agency. And that means they need to look into that kind of stuff. And since they didn't really draft a quarterback, the Bucs could be very much interested in just going into the supplemental draft and grabbing Sorsby themselves so that he could develop and maybe be their guy if Baker gets hurt, or if inevitably he ends up leaving for free agency. But the final team, a wild card team that I feel could be interested, is another team that kind of hasn't reached a new agreement with their quarterback, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I know some people are looking at, now this is the one that people are going to be like, wait, have you lost your mind? They got Lamar, they got multi MVP winning quarterback Lamar Jackson, and you're telling me that they would go out there to get a new young quarterback? Yes, it's possible. Similar to Baker Mayfield, while Lamar does still have 2 more years left on his contract, there has been no discussions about a possible extension, with the only talks being that they have talked with Lamar about an extension, but it hasn't really reached anything because it seems like he might want more money, and the Ravens may not be fully interested in giving him that more money because they still want to see him be able to get this team to a Super Bowl or make it an appearance or at least win it. So they're reaching a crossroads of their own where now they kind of, in my opinion, should at least play with the idea of going out there to get a young quarterback to develop and learn in case Lamar gets hurt, or if they're not able to reach an agreement to keep him there for even longer. And we've already seen them make moves where they went and not drafted, but signed the undrafted free agent Diego Pavia, a quarterback we talked about from Vanderbilt, and that he didn't get drafted. We already talked about his bad attitude about it and all that kind of stuff, but the Ravens are giving him a chance to prove that maybe he can be the quarterback that changed Vanderbilt's whole dynamic in the college atmosphere. But again, Ravens is kind of my wild card team. Those are my teams that I think could show interest in maybe going into that supplemental draft, submitting one of their draft picks to go out there and go for Brenden Sorsby. But we'll have to wait and see. And if anything does change, whether it's that he gets his application approved, or especially when we get maybe towards the end of July and he does end up getting drafted, trust me, we will talk about it here. But now we're going to go and move on to a little bit of to our last little section, and that is the movie side of things. And well, when talking about the movies here, we got it. First thing to start off is we had a little bit of a new trailer drop for a movie that had a trailer last year, but it received a lot of backlash. People weren't too happy with it. They didn't like the looks of the characters and so on and so forth. And that is of a very, very much a beloved franchise, one that I grew up on, and that is none other than Shrek 5. Yes, you heard that right. Shrek 5 has a new trailer that released today, as it will be releasing in summer 2027. This is the movie that has experienced a lot of backlash, and I am going to kind of have the trailer somewhat play in the background, but I might do some pauses in between here while I'm talking. But this is a movie that had backlash. Like I said, when that trailer was dropped last year, people did not like the redesigns they had for Shrek and the crew. People were like, "Oh, what are these designs? That's not my donkey. That's not my Shrek. Like, these ain't these people." Yet, also too, for anybody that is wondering, everybody is coming back. So Eddie Murphy is still Donkey. Mike Myers is still Shrek. Cameron Diaz is still Fiona, and so on and so forth, with a new edition of, yeah, you see that. I saw the trailer. I'm a little mixed on it. There's some jokes I was like, okay, this is funny, and other jokes I'm like, okay, is this really what we're going for? The designs are still growing on me, but I don't have too much of a problem. But again, that controversy from the designs might seem like, oh, well, that's just people complaining. There's nothing too serious to really be worrying about here. But then with all that backlash, they then announced that they were delaying the movie to 2027. Because if I'm correct, the movie was supposed to be coming out this year. That didn't happen. And it got pushed back. They were reworking it. Well, that kind of came because it was leaked that the original story for this movie was going to be that Shrek and his daughter, Felicia, who's going to be voiced by Zendaya in this movie. Wow, big shocker. They grab someone that's almost everything nowadays. That they were going to end up going to the real world, where they would have a run-in with Lord Farquaad from the first movie, who we all remember. Lord Farquaad, he was the big bad, the guy who was short. You got, for anybody that remembers Shrek, yeah, this guy right here, if I could get the picture pulled up of him. Yeah, this guy, the short stack, that they would end up running back into him, and he would be running essentially a makeshift Universal Studios with a Shrek theme park, and that they would run into him, and they'd have to try to work on their way to get back to their animated world. People didn't like it. I definitely was not a fan of that plot. It's such a weird way to waste one of the OG villains from the first movie. But yeah, they delayed the movie. Clearly, it was to change the story. And as we're seeing, even as you just saw in that trailer, this movie is it looks like it's going to be fully animated, and they're going to change up a lot of things. Again, I think the animation looks good. I'm still in this in between, like, is it going to be good? Is it not going to be good? I love the Shrek movies. The first one, the second one were good. Third one is Fourth one, I think, was a step in the right direction, but a lot of people didn't like it, so that's why it's been so many years since a sequel. But you share your opinions down below in the comment and chat. Are you excited for Shrek 5, or do you think they should have stopped at 4? Next up on the movie news, we're going to kind of get into some DC Warner Brothers stuff before we kind of end off the show with our big history breakdown, as I could say. You know, we talked about it briefly, but we'll get into that in a second involving Warner Brothers. But one of our first little DC Warner Brothers news, James Gunn confirmed one of his upcoming projects will be a Jimmy Olsen and Gorilla Garage show, is currently in the works. As he said, and I quote, "We start filming soon." There was rumors that Jimmy Olsen, you guys might remember, he appeared in the 2025 Superman movie. He is a close comrade, friend of Superman, one of his best friends. And there was rumors that he would be getting a TV show. People already complained back then when it was announced, and now people are complaining at this point, where they're like, "Are you serious? Where's my Aquaman show? Where's my Aquaman movie? Where's my Flash movie? Where's my Wonder Woman movie?" Instead, we're getting a Jimmy Olsen and Gorilla Grodd show. Gorilla Grodd, here in the picture, some DC people might remember he was the villain for he's the villain for the Flash. He's a silverback gorilla who has a high intellect and who has telepathic powers to mind control people and so on. So he's a villain of the Flash. And I'm open to it because I trust James Gunn. He's a guy who's, like I've said in multiple times before in my shows, he's worked on stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy. He did the Suicide Squad. He did the 2025 Superman. He did Peacemaker. And if I'm correct, he's kind of working on the Green Lantern show. He's a guy I do trust because so far, as I've seen, he hasn't really let me down. And I know people aren't happy that they're picking, as they're saying, to. I've seen a lot of DC fans who, I'm sorry to call y'all this, y'all are LARPers, because they're over here talking about, who are these nobodies you're giving a show to? I want the big dogs. Gorilla Grodd, like I said, he is one of the main villains for the Flash, so that's a pretty big dog to me. And Jimmy Olsen is a good friend with Superman. And funny enough, while people think this is crazy, this is something that does happen in the comics, where Jimmy Olsen be getting himself into. Let me see here, Jimmy Olsen. Where in the comics there have been multiple Jimmy Olsen comic runs where this dude has gotten himself into some of the craziest situations ever. Some of the old comics, like here we see Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. If this will load up, who killed Jimmy Olsen? You see, like Jimmy Olsen. This is not anything new. For years, there have been stories where Jimmy Olsen gets himself into these crazy situations that you're like, how is he going to get out of this? And yet he does it. And you see all these different little panels and comic covers. So this is not the first time that Jimmy Olsen has gotten himself into serious storylines. Look at this. Here's one where it looks like Jimmy Olsen got superpower. Jimmy Olsen got superpowers and fought Darkseid, one of the big bads for the Justice League, and yet here's Jimmy Olsen fighting him hand-to-hand combat. Like, you see all these different comic covers, so hopefully you kind of see the point where some people are like, guys, why are y'all complaining? This is not the first time Jimmy Olsen has gotten into serious situations. There was even a comic run where Jimmy Olsen was dating one of Superman's villains, Banshee, where they got into a relationship. So Jimmy Olsen has been a guy that has a history of getting into like Justice League Superman level threats and surviving it. So if the comedy is good, if the show is good, I don't have a problem with them doing a Jimmy Olsen and Gorilla Grodd show. Hey, for all we know, the Flash might make an appearance in there, because I feel like there's no way you could do a Gorilla Grodd. You can't do a show with Gorilla Grodd and not have the Flash. That would just be weird, you know? So I'm optimistic. We'll see what happens. I trust James Gunn. We'll just have to see if he's able to deliver on this. But share your opinions down below. What do you think about Jimmy Olsen and Gorilla Grodd getting a TV show together? But next up in the DC news, now this is something that's already been reported on. We're going to kind of talk about the other news. Well, actually, first, let's talk about. It was officially revealed. We got our first logo for the Batman Part 2. I've talked about this upcoming sequel for a few times before in past episodes. I love the Batman with Robert Pattinson. It was a good movie. It was a phenomenal watch. Robert Pattinson played that role perfectly as both Bruce Wayne and Batman. It was good. And it was one of those movies, for a movie that was 3 hours long, I did not feel the runtime at all. It felt like it was paced perfectly well. It didn't feel like it took too long for me, and I enjoyed it. Great time. So this is, of course, the anticipated sequel by Matt Reeves. For some of you that don't know, Matt Reeves is the director who worked on the Planet of the Apes trilogy. You guys might remember the more recent ones, like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Let's see, what was it? It was Rise, Dawn, and War for the Planet of the Apes. He did those 3 movies, and then of course we had the recent Planet of the Apes movie that was kind of a sequel, but he didn't come back to direct it. But still, he directed those movies, so that kind of should let you know his resume. Matt Reeves has a deep resume that has impressed a lot of people with his work, and the Batman is no different. So, of course, it's awesome to see that we got this logo. We've been waiting for filming to start. Filming has begun. We've been seeing set photos released by Matt Reeves, and this is our first little picture of the logo itself. Hey, I'm glad they're sticking with the color scheme. This looks good. But we're kind of going to be talking about here a little bit of some casting news. As well, one of the casting news that was reported, not this, my bad, guys. One of the casting news that was reported / rumored was by the Snyder, Jeff Snyder. He had reported that Brian Tyree Henry will play Harvey Dent. There was a lot of rumors of the casting. It was, funny enough, it was reported all the way back in May, well, not all the way back, but last month, that Brian Tyree Henry was cast in the movie. Scarlett Johansson, Charles Dance, Sebastian Stan had all been casted. People were making their theories, like, oh, who's gonna play who? I bet Sebastian Stan is gonna play Harvey Dent because he's been rumored to be in this movie, and we're gonna get kind of a Harvey Dent story and stuff. That's gonna be so fun. And then Scarlett will be his wife, and so on and so forth. Well, Snyder is now saying that it isn't going to be Sebastian Stan who will be Harvey Dent. Instead, it will be Brian Tyree Henry. And of course, as always, with the internet being the cesspool negative space that it is, people are, of course, like, what is this? Oh my goodness, Sebastian Stan was right there. He would have been the perfect Two-Face. What are you talking about? Brian Tyree Henry will be him. Me? I'm all for this because if first off, let me because a lot of these people that are complaining about a black actor portraying Two-Face, you don't know ball, obviously, because if you're a classic Batman fan, if you are a classic Batman fan, you would know that in the original like Adam West series for Batman, Two-Face, let's see here if I could find, no, not the animated, we need the live action. Give me one sec here. Let's see. I'm gonna look up actors who portrayed Two-Face. Let's see. Give me one sec. Jesus. One of my first, you can't see it because I got it cropped out, but one of the first things that pulled up was actors who portrayed Jesus. Oh my goodness. But we're looking up Harvey Dent here. Actors who played Harvey Dent. So, as you can see, here's a list. You see the cast of people who have all played as the Riddler. Oh, sorry, not the Riddler. As Two-Face. But as you can see, one of the guys who portrayed Two-Face was Billy D. Williams. And he was funny enough, he was actually supposed to portray Two-Face in the Tim Burton Batman series. But of course, he only got to play, as if I'm correct, as Harvey Dent. Let's see here. If I could possibly. Yeah, so see in the 1989 Tim Burton Batman movie, he portrayed Harvey Dent in there. And then, of course, if the series was to continue, he probably would have became Two-Face at a later point. But still, this is not the first time that a black actor has portrayed Two-Face. So, and when it comes to the whole, like, people complaining about race swap and all of that, I don't get that argument, because if the race of a character is not important to their story, then there shouldn't be that big of a problem. Now, if the race of a character is important to their story, then that's where you start to have those like conversations of, okay, that's a little weird. Like, you can't make Black Panther white. It just wouldn't work, because Black Panther being African American is part of his story. It is part of his origin. It is part of what makes T'Challa Black Panther Black Panther. If you made him white, that's whitewashing. So you see, there's a difference between whitewashing and race swapping. For example, one character that's in that weird middle ground, Batman, for example, he's always been portrayed by a Caucasian male in most media, but there is no rules that suggest he has to be portrayed by a white actor. People have kind of just built in their heads that because of his story, that he comes from a rich family. People assume that because he comes from a rich family that he's supposed to come from this spoiled family like this. It makes more sense from the white Caucasian, but it's still up in the air. Batman can be portrayed by, I think, any race. So again, I don't have a problem with a race swap, especially because, and I'm not even saying if it was another actor, but still, they got themselves, if it is true that he's going to be portraying Harvey Dent in the Batman Part 2, they got a good actor, because this is the guy that, from one of my favorite animated movies of recent memory, Transformers 1, he portrayed what's his name? I think it's D12, who later becomes Megatron. When I tell you Brian Tyree Henry put on a voice performance there, I gotta pull up a clip. He put on a voice performance, and hopefully Paramount. Dang, I want to play the clip, but I know how bad Paramount is, man. Yeah, I'm not gonna play the clip. Paramount is really strict when it comes to playing clips from stuff they own. But he put on a performance, and he did a good job playing an intimidating villain. And so I trust him to put on a good acting performance as Harvey Dent. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And now the rumors are is that alongside the reveal that Brian Tyree Henry could be playing Harvey Dent Two-Face, where now the reports are is that Sebastian Stan is actually going to be playing Victor Zsasz. Now, for those who don't know Victor Zsasz, because he is a little bit more of an obscure Batman villain. He is a serial killer, as you can see in this picture, where essentially he kills people and then he marks them on their body. They always had some crazy kinds of characters in comics to make, but he's going to be a character that now is being rumored who Sebastian Stan will be portraying. And now this kind of shakes up the whole casting announcements of, so if he's not going to be Harvey Dent, then that kind of destroys the whole who is Scarlett Johansson going to be playing, because everybody thought that she was going to be playing Harvey Dent's wife, and that then Charles Dance would be her father, and then we would have the whole Dent family, and then the Court of Owls. But now people are feeling like there could still be a Court of Owls, because a lot of rumors are suggesting that Court of Owls is going to be heavily involved in this. The Court of Owls is like a group of like kind of high elites. Let's be real, they're kind of DC's version of the Illuminati in a sense, but they're full of people who wear owl masks, and some are even highly trained assassins. But there's now speculation that maybe let's see here, that Scarlett Johansson could be portraying another Batman character, the Phantasm, where some may remember there was for anybody that grew up in that old Batman animated series, there was a movie called Batman Mask of the Phantasm. To this day it is revered and loved as one of the best, and seen as one of the best of the as one of the Batman animated movies, or even just Batman movies in general. I watched it. It is a really good movie, and it lives up to the hype that so many Batman fans discuss and talk about. And so the character in there is someone that is trying to take revenge on the Joker and crime and stuff, but is doing it in a way that doesn't really work for Batman. We all know Batman doesn't like to kill. Phantasm likes to kill, doesn't mind killing. And so it's a whole mystery of who is the Phantasm, until we finally find out that it's actually Bruce Wayne's love interest in this movie that turns out to be the big bad of the film. And so now people are thinking that maybe Scarlett Johansson could be portraying her, the Phantasm, in this movie, which a Batman movie that could be possibly featuring Victor Zsasz, Two-Face, Harvey Dent, and Phantasm and Court of Owls. That's a pretty, I think there's a good story you could work there, and I trust Matt Reeves to do it. So for my audience watching, what do you think about these possible rumors that Brian Tyree Henry could maybe be our upcoming Harvey Dent Two-Face for the Batman Part 2? Share your opinions down below. And two, also share, are you excited for Batman Part 2? But now we're going to move on to our last thing of the night. I know our show is getting ready to wrap up here in a sec, but, well, not in a sec, but a couple minutes. But our last thing we want to talk about here, we did a YouTube short about this a couple days ago, where we discussed where we went and kind of broke down, discussed that the Justice Department had approved the merger of Warner Brothers and Paramount. We've talked about this before on the show, how I'm not a fan of this. Not only in the sense of course, this is again showing the signs of monopoly, where all these big studios and companies are just turning around and buying others. I don't like it in the sense of that a merger like this is most definitely going to result in a lot of layoffs, where people are going to get fired, because there's no way these big companies are going to be able to keep everybody on both sides hired at the same time. So it sucks to see it. That's another thing I don't like it. But I also don't like it because of what it possibly means for media as a whole. Now, before we do go into kind of our history breakdown here, there is some good to this, as it has been reported that there are apparently a lot of, and even here, A potential Paramount Warner Brothers Discovery merger could have a major impact on Atlanta. Up to 6,000 layoffs are expected, with Atlanta likely among the hardest hit due to overlapping operations. With WB's Techwood campus could reportedly be sold, fewer film and TV productions could mean less work for major Georgia studios like Trilith, Assembly, and Shadowbox Studios. The cuts would come after recent downsizing at TCM, Adult Swim, and Cartoon Network, which is true. This stuff has been happening. People have been getting let go at Cartoon Network. It's been slowly working in the it's been slowly happening in the background, and this big merger is only going to speed things up. But here comes the good news, possible good news. As after it was reported that they had gotten approved, there was another judge in California saying, hold on now, I'm not approving this. And so, as reported here by TuneHive, nearly a dozen additional U.S. state attorneys general are reportedly preparing to join California and New York in filing lawsuits against the proposed Paramount Warner Brothers merger. The upcoming midterm election could also pose a challenge for the deal, as a Democratic-led Congress may continue efforts to scrutinize and potentially derail the acquisition. Now, you might be sitting there wondering, Darius Fleetway, which however you refer to me, what's so big about this? What's the big deal? Why is everybody making a big deal about this? Why is people trying to fight against this to not happen? The reason people are trying so hard to fight against this happening is because, let's see if I want to kind of find just a good image of just Warner Brothers and Paramount together while I kind of give you guys this breakdown. Yeah, even Deadlight's reporting that a lot of people are eyeing Warner Bros. And Paramount. There's a very high chance this does not go through. But the reason people are fighting against this so hard right now is because if a merger like this happens, because of who Paramount has made publicly known who they align themselves with, this could change how movies come out in essentially what a lot of people feel freedom of speech. Now, we're not talking about opinions about how already politics already kind of control how movies come out. I agree. There are the signs that it already is happening. But this would be on a larger scale because Paramount, I'm just going to straight up say it, they are very pro-Trump administration. They're very pro-Saudi Arabia. They're very pro-Israel. They're very pro on that whole little group of people that really love hanging out around each other. And when I'm about to break down this history for you guys, and hopefully I'm going to do my best here to not take too long so you guys don't end up tuning away or feeling like it's dragging. But let me break down this history with this whole merger on maybe why you could see why people are very much against the idea of Paramount owning Warner Brothers and owning all these IPs and having a lot more stake and control in the movie industry. Well, like I said before, Paramount, they've made it very clear that they are very pro Saudi Arabia, very pro Trump, very pro Israel. They've made statements about when the beginning of the whole Palestine-Israel war was going on, that they were showing their support towards the U.S. government in helping support Israel in the trying times, et cetera, et cetera. We've seen another thing that kind of resulted in that. We know because of their connections and relationship with Israel and support for them that the Scream franchise, a franchise that is owned by Paramount, one of their stars, Melissa Barrera, she had made it publicly known that she was very pro-Palestine and against Israel. Then it was announced that she had been removed from the upcoming Scream 7 movie. And people could try their best to say as much as they can, oh, they separated because of this. They separated and cut her because she made it publicly known she was not pro-Israel. So again, showing how that affects that freedom of speech kind of territory and stuff. Another thing that kind of shows these deep connections here is involving with Trump. Two movies I'm going to tell y'all where these connections that very much worry me. One of them just came out, Scary Movie 6. I have not seen the movie. I was very interested in seeing the movie because I have watched a lot of the scary movies, those parody movies from the Wayans brothers, but I heard a lot of that it was a really bad movie, and I'm like, I'm not going to waste my time on it. Who knows? Maybe when it comes on streaming or something, I'll check it out, but as far as I'm concerned at this moment, I'm not going to check it out. But I heard that in that movie, there was 2 deleted jokes that were supposed to be in the movie, and both pertain to making fun of our president. One involved a joke where they were going to talk about Epstein Island and the Epstein files and stuff, and apparently one of them cracks a joke where they say a quote that Trump said, and Paramount told the Wayans brothers, you need to remove that joke. Knowing that Paramount is so very close-knit with Trump, it makes sense they didn't want to piss off their ruler. Let's just say it how it is. They didn't want to piss off their ruler, and they told him, hey, you need to get rid of this joke because if Trump sees us, we don't want him getting mad at us. So that was one joke. Now, some of you might say, oh, well, that's a coincidence. That's just one joke. Well, there was a second joke. Another joke, they were going to be making fun of Trump's wife, Melania Trump. And, well, they had a joke in there. Again, Paramount went to the Wayans brothers and told them, you need to get rid of this joke. So, first time, coincidence. Second time, it turns into okay, clearly they ain't a fan. They ain't a fan of you making jokes about a certain person. But so you're seeing already that kind of control that's happening there. And just imagine other future movies that are to release under them from Warner Brothers, or even all these studios under Warner Brothers. If they try to release something that maybe takes a jab or cracks a joke about a certain country or a certain president, they're going to go and say is, you need to get rid of that joke, or we're going to, let's take it to the extreme. We're going to cancel your show if you don't get rid of this joke. You see the problem there. Now, another little history is a upcoming movie, Rush Hour 4. Now, you guys might be like, wait a minute, Darius, what does Rush Hour 4 have to do with Trump, Paramount, Saudi Arabia, all those connections? Well, it actually has a lot to do with it, because Rush Hour 4, a movie that has been asked by fans for years to happen. People love the Rush Hour franchise. I love the Rush Hour franchise. Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker were hilarious in those movies. But we never got a fourth one after the third, and everybody wanted it, but it never happened. Well, let me break it down why there wasn't a fourth one for a long time. Because the original director, who kind of has a stake in owning the franchise, was dealing with a lot of sexual misconduct allegations and legal problems. And that's why it was taking so long for a Rush Hour 4, because while people want to move on, he wasn't, from what I've heard and looked at and seen and researched, he wasn't willing to let them move on without him. That he was like, if you're to do another Rush Hour 4, I have to be a part of it. Whether I have to be a part of this. And for the longest time, it was like, oh, well, that's a tricky slope to really get into and stuff. We don't know if we can really do that. Well, he's returning to direct Rush Hour 4. And now you might be saying is like, okay, if he was dealing with all this legal trouble, how did he possibly get out of all this legal trouble? Well, our very loving president pardoned the director from his legal troubles, so then he could go and direct the Melania Trump documentary movie that came out a year ago. That same director that did the Rush Hour movies, he directed the Melania Trump movie, and because of that connection with him and Trump was like, you know what? Yeah, I like you, director man. I want you to go and make that Rush Hour 4. That was some funny stuff. I'll go and pardon your trouble, so then you could go and direct that movie with Paramount, so we could get this rolling. And here we are. Rush Hour 4 is happening. Even Trump, I remember when it was announced that it was happening, Trump was very vocal to reporters, like, "Oh yeah, that's a funny franchise. I like it a lot. I like the funny Asian man, the black man. They make a lot of funny jokes." Sorry, I had to do the impression. I had to. But still, you're seeing where the problems are coming with these deep connections. And to add more salt on the wound of how, in my opinion, Rush Hour 4 has been ruined for me, the plot for Rush Hour, the leaked plot, is that Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker are going to have a mission where they're going to be in, where's a place that we just said is deep pockets connections with Paramount, Israel, and Trump? The movie's plot is going to be taking place in Saudi Arabia. Where let's see. I mean, just so you guys know, I'm not bluffing. I'm not lying to you. I'm not lying to you. This is not. I'm not making this up. I wish I was, but I'm not. Um, let's see. So yeah, so Rush Hour 4 has been reported that's going to be a globe-trotting movie, and that they are going to be shooting this summer, actually. Funny enough, that was what was last reported, in Africa, China. You see what I'm circling right there, guys? Saudi Arabia. So you're seeing where all these connections are coming from. Now, that's not even the biggest scandal of this whole Paramount Warner Brothers merger. Because you might remember, I talked about another company that was supposed to be going out there and trying to go after Warner Brothers in a deal. And this is kind of a little breakdown. That was none other than Netflix. Netflix was supposed to go and buy Warner Brothers. It was reported they had the biggest bid. That Warner Brothers were like, "Yep, they have the biggest bid. Netflix, we are gonna merge with you guys." And then the running gag was that you had Netflix was kind of, for Warner Brothers picking a landing destination. Netflix was the beloved child, while you had Paramount constantly tugging on Warner Brothers' shirt, like, "Hey, give me attention. I'm right here. I'm throwing money at you, Warner Brothers. I want you guys to merge with us. We want you guys." And every single time, Warner Brothers would come out and be like, "Yeah, we're not gonna move forward in this deal with Paramount." They don't even have, they were like, "Oh yeah, Paramount doesn't even have a deal that's close to what Netflix offered us. Netflix is the better bidder. We're gonna go to Netflix." That was the thing for months on months. Paramount was the butt of the joke, because everybody was like, "Ha, look at Paramount. They're trying so desperately to get this company that clearly does not want anything to do with them." Well, weirdly enough, reports started to come out that Trump would apparently, where Trump was coming out saying that he would get involved in, let's see here. Look at this. Trump Netflix. Let's check this out here. Let's see if this kind of helps us give a little breakdown. Donald Trump's primary intersection with Netflix involves this recent regulatory scrutiny of the company and a biographical documentary series available on the platform. See, so there's a documentary apparently about him on Netflix. So he really don't like him. The Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery merger. In recent months, the administration has been heavily involved in media industry transactions. Netflix attempted to acquire Warner Bros. Discovery's film studios and HBO Max, a deal valued at over $82 billion. However, President Trump publicly stated that the merger could be a problem due to market share concerns, and signaled he would be personally involved in the government's approval process. Netflix ultimately walked away from the acquisition, claiming that the deal was no longer financially attractive amid competition from a rival Paramount Skydance bid. Now, that's the short version of it. The long version is, like I said, Trump made it very clear that he would be heavily involved in essentially saying, "I will do everything in my power to make sure that Netflix does not get their hands on Paramount. That Netflix does not beat out my child, Paramount, for Warner Brothers, because it will be a problem." No, it won't, Trump. Let's be real, man. So he said it would be a problem. He got involved. So he made publicly he would get involved in the approval process. Here's the thing, though. I think, and I know we're getting into conspiracy theories, but I think he did get involved, because for Netflix to all of a sudden back away from this, saying it wasn't attractive anymore, that they were like, "Yeah, we're just not going to take the deal." And then even to David Zaslav having a change in tune, now being like, "Actually, Paramount had the best offer. They have the best deal, and we're glad to be getting this done." And it was like, wait, what? You just said a week ago that their offer couldn't compare to Netflix. What changed? And my conspiracy theory, and you guys can share your opinions down in the chat or the comment below what you think. But my theory is I think 100% Trump got involved. He talked to the people behind Netflix and either A, threatened them or paid them off to back away from this deal and told Warner Brothers, hey, y'all better take Paramount's deal or I'm going to make this a serious hassle for you guys. So let's get this done. And now everybody's changing their tunes. There was even reports that Zaslav was supposed to be getting that apparently he was going to get a pay increase for selling Warner Brothers, which makes no sense because ever since he's been the owner of Warner Brothers, he has sent that company down the actual gutter. So it's insane that he was going to get money for ruining a company. But then it was reported that he would no longer get paid for that. So still, it sounds like a lot of back pocket money. Like here's $1 million, take the deal. And it's just, and even there was even rumors and reports that Trump may have even paid off the CEO of Netflix to tell him to essentially back off of this deal or else. And so yeah, that's the history, and that is why a lot of people, myself included, are very much against this merger happening, because this is a merger that could seriously have a negative ripple effect on the movie industry. And I'm not saying that the movie industry is perfect. I'm not saying it is pure. I am not even saying that it's holy in any sense of the word. It has all of its flaws. People are scummy. They're dirty. I'm not even saying that they're perfect. And I'm not even saying that movies nowadays don't already get controlled by the powers that be in the government. But if this merger happens, this could shift and change where it won't be it's one thing if it's subtle, but if it becomes a full force, like in your face, like this movie was supported by the Trump administration, or I'm Donald Trump and I approve this movie, or we keep getting rumors and reports that, oh yeah, we had a joke that would have taken a jab at this administration, but they told us we couldn't do it. That kind of control starts to get into a territory. I'm not going to get into that whole conversation because I know we got to wrap up the show here, but it's like, it leaves me just like, this is not good. It just doesn't look good. And like I said, the final thing I want to leave you guys off with is that if this was like any other deal, like when Disney was buying Fox or other deals that had happened in the past, if there wasn't so much evidence to point that so much political meddling occurred in this merger to happen, I don't think people would be talking about it as much. They probably wouldn't. But because it is so publicly known of how much of political meddling has been going on for this merger to happen, it's like, dude, this didn't even happen in the sense of like a bid happened, they won, leave it at that. No, this involved political powers that be getting involved to essentially pay off people or threaten to back away from a deal so then another company could come out victorious. So that is why this is getting so much of like backlash, why a lot of attorneys are now like, oh no, we didn't approve this. We are going to get involved and sue this so this does not end up occurring. Again, when I made that short, it was being like, oh, the Department of Justice approved it. It was happening, but now we're in a standstill where it's like, oh no, we are not done yet. We're still planning on suing on this. So if anything happens, if anything changes, trust me, your boy is going to talk about this stuff and we will break down what happens, whether it ends up going through or if it ends up falling apart. But that is all that we got on tonight's episode. I'm glad for everybody that did tune in and stay around with me. I know this did go a little longer than expected, but there was a lot to talk about, especially on that Brenden Sorsby and the whole Paramount Warner Brothers Netflix merger fiasco. I really wanted to talk about it ever since I made that short and give you guys a breakdown of why there's so much of a negative pushback on it. But again, as always, I hope that you guys take care. Love you guys. And as always, we'll be live every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. See you guys next time.